when the HOA slapped me with a $250,000 fine for violations on my own property. They had no idea they were messing with the wrong guy. They thought they had the upper hand with their petty rules and threats. What they didn't know, land they lived on the roads, the clubhouse, the greenbelts, and even their driveways, all of it belonged to me. The letter that started, all it began with a plain white envelope shoved into my mailbox. Stamped in bold red letters, notice of violations immediate, action required. Inside was a laundry list of complaints. Unauthorized structure in yard, non-compliant fencing, excessive noise from construction, failure to submit architectural changes for approval. At the bottom, in a smugly typed paragraph, was the number that made me laugh out loud. $250,000 in accumulated fines. I thought it was a joke. But as I flipped through the pages, I saw photographs of my land, my barn, my workshop, even my driveway. The HOA wasn't bluffing. They were dead serious. My violations, here's the kicker. I wasn't even part of their HOA. My land sat on the border of their development. A few acres that my family had owned for decades. I used it for my workshop, for building furniture, and for storing equipment. Apparently, the HOA board decided that because my driveway connected to the neighborhood road, I was under their jurisdiction. They claimed my barn was an unapproved dwelling. My workshop was unsightly. My pickup truck wasn't HOA approved. It was absurd. But what really burned me was the arrogance. They wrote as if they already owned my land, as if I had to bow down and comply. Meeting the board instead of tearing the letter up, I decided to play along. I went to their monthly HOA meetings, held in a stuffy clubhouse decorated with fake plants and fluorescent lighting. The board president, a wiry woman named Linda, sat at the center like a queen on her throne. I introduced myself politely. "Hi, I'm James. I got this violation notice in my mailbox. There seems to be a mistake." Linda cut me off with a smirk. "What's no mistake? You've been out of compliance for years. We've been more than patient." "Out of compliance? With what?" I asked. "With our community standards," she said, adjusting her pearl necklace. "Your structures don't meet design guidelines, and your property is lowering the value of our homes. You owe the HOA $250,000. I almost laughed. "That's interesting, because I don't recall ever signing a contract with your HOA. Linda's smile turned cold. "If you're connected to our roads, you're under our authority. That's how it works. You can pay the fines, or we'll take legal action." I nodded slowly, biting back my grin. "Is that so? Okay then, take legal action." The research that night, I dug through old files in my grandfather's safe. He was a sharp man who never trusted developers or associations. And sure enough, buried in the paperwork, I found the deed-a legal map that showed something shocking. Not only did my family still own my land, but we also owned the entire stretch of undeveloped property that the HOA had built their roads and clubhouse on. Apparently, when the developers bought land decades ago, they made an easement deal for construction but never transferred full ownership of the roads, green belts, and community spaces. My grandfather had quietly renewed the land rights every few years. In other words, the HOA had been operating for years on property they didn't actually own. The lawyer's reaction: I took the papers to my attorney, a bulldog of a man named Mark. When I showed him the deeds, he whistled low. "James, this isn't just leverage. This is a hammer. You could shut down their entire HOA if you wanted." He drafted a response letter to the board. It was short and brutal. "Our client does not recognize your authority. In fact, our client is the legal owner of the property your association occupies, including the roads, clubhouse, and green spaces. Any further harassment will be considered trespassing. You are hereby instructed to cease all attempts at enforcement."
They saw it.
We sent it certified mail. I imagined Linda's face turning red as she read it. The HOA's counterattack, of course. The HOA didn't back down. They held an emergency meeting and sent me another notice, this one threatening to place a lien on my property. That's when I decided it was time to flip the script. I hired a surveyor and a property manager. Together, we put up private property, no trespassing signs at the entrances to the neighborhood. Then, I had my attorney draft a new set of letters this time. Addressed to every homeowner in the HOA, the letters explained that the HOA had no legal right to enforce rules on my land. The HOA itself was operating on property they didn't own. I, as the landowner, would now be charging the HOA rent for use of the roads and clubhouse. The amount? $500 per household per month. The neighborhood explodes within days. My phone lit up with angry calls, not from the HOA board, but from regular homeowners. One guy shouted, "You can't do this. We already pay HOA dues," I calmly explained. "You've been paying dues to a board that doesn't even own the land. You've basically been scammed. I'm just enforcing my rights as the property owner." The news spread like wildfire. People started demanding answers from Linda and the board. Homeowners showed up at the clubhouse, waving my letter in the air. Linda tried to spin it, calling me a greedy neighbor exploiting a loophole. But the homeowners weren't buying it. They wanted to know why their board had been lying to them for years. The court battle, of course, the HOA finally tried to sue me. They filed a lawsuit claiming I was interfering with their community rights. But when we walked into court, my lawyer dropped the stack of deeds and easement documents on the judge's desk. The judge flipped through them, raised an eyebrow, and looked straight at Linda. "Ma'am," the judge said, "you don't own the land you've been enforcing rules on. This case is dismissed." It was over in less than an hour. Turning the tables after the case was dismissed, I had full legal authority to enforce my property rights. But I did. The HOA board resigned in disgrace. The homeowners voted to dissolve the HOA entirely. But they still needed access to the roads and community facilities, my roads and facilities. So I offered them a choice: buy the land from me at market value, which was in the millions. Pay me a reasonable monthly fee for continued use. Most of them chose the fee. I lowered it to $200 per household, which was still cheaper than what they had been paying the HOA anyway. The irony. The same people who once threatened me with $250,000 in fines now mailed me checks every month voluntarily. Linda's downfall is for Linda, the once powerful HOA president. She didn't take it well. She tried rallying the neighbors to fight me, but no one trusted her anymore. When it came out that she'd been pocketing some of the HOA dues for administrative expenses, her reputation was ruined. She eventually sold her house and moved away. I heard she tried joining another HOA board in a different state. I almost feel sorry for the poor souls who live there now. Almost the new normal life is peaceful now. My workshop is thriving, my barn stands proudly, and no one dares tell me what kind of truck I can drive. Every month, checks roll in from the neighborhood for use of land that has always been mine. Instead of fighting with an HOA, I became their landlord. And every time I cash those checks, I remember the smug look on Linda's face when she told me I owed her $250,000. She thought she owned me. Turns out I owned her entire neighborhood. Asterisk this. Story is just the beginning. There is so much more ahead. Subscribe to the channel to join me on this journey.